Let's begin episode 11 of Whispers of the Ancients, Ancient Civilizations of the Americas. Episode 11, The Toltecs, Shadows of the Warrior Priests, approximately 900 to 1150 CE, Segment 1. A civilization between myth and memory. In the arid highlands of central Mexico, rising from the twilight of Teotihuacan's collapse and the silence of fragmented city-states, a new power emerged, mysterious, martial and mythic. The Toltecs, their legacy, though partially veiled in legend, left a profound imprint on Mesoamerican identity. To later peoples, they were not simply ancestors, they were paragons of knowledge, war, artistry, and divine order. Their capital, Tula or Tollan as remembered by the Aztecs, was a city of obsidian blades and feathered symbols, of stern warriors and lofty priests, where sacred fire was said to have never died. Yet the historical Toltecs remain elusive. What is myth? What is memory? And where does the truth lie? This is their story. Segment 2, Rise from the Ashes of Collapse. After Teotihuacan's fall around 550 CE, the Valley of Mexico entered a period of political fragmentation. Dozens of smaller polities competed for dominance and cultural traditions splintered. But around 900 CE, highland central Mexico witnessed the rise of a new center of gravity. The Toltec state, headquartered at Tula Tollan in the modern-day state of Hidalgo, emerging from the Chichimeca-speaking peoples, a term often used for semi-nomadic groups of the northern deserts. The Toltecs consolidated a powerful military aristocracy, spreading their influence across much of northern and central Mexico. They fused the warlike spirit of the north with the religious and artistic legacy of Teotihuacan. Their rule was not just about conquest, but about cultural fusion, absorbing and reinterpreting the sacred traditions of the past. Tula grew into a city of 40,000 to 60,000 people, not as vast as Teotihuacan or later Tenochtitlan, but symbolically mighty. Segment 3, Tula, the city of reeds. The Toltecs called their capital Tollan, meaning place of reeds, a poetic symbol for civilization itself in Mesoamerican metaphor. But Tollan was no lush paradise. Built on rugged terrain, above the Tula River, it was a fortress city, its heart adorned with ceremonial pyramids and towering stone warriors. At its center stood the pyramid of Quetzalcoatl, the lord of the House of the Dawn, commonly associated with Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. Surrounding the pyramid were the Atlantean columns for massive stone warriors over 15 feet tall. They wore butterfly-shaped pectorals, sun discs, and carried at lapels spear throwers, symbolic of elite martial power. These warrior statues were not merely decorations, they were ideological icons. They stood watch over Tula as eternal sentinels of divine order. Beneath them lay evidence of intense artistic production, bas-reliefs of eagles devouring hearts, jaguars stalking prey, and serpents coiling into cosmic patterns, each motif a fusion of war and cosmology. Segment 4. Warrior priests and sacral power. The Toltecs did not distinguish between the sacred and the political. Their rulers were warrior priests, mediators between the gods and the world of men. Chief among their deities was Quetzalcoatl, god of wind, learning, and priesthood, often contrasted with Tezcatlipoca, god of sorcery, night, and conflict. These opposing forces, light and shadow, were ever at war in Toltec mythology, a cosmic duality embodied in the historical conflicts between Toltec leaders. According to post-classic Aztec sources, the legendary Toltec ruler Tepiltzin Quetzalcoatl was a priest-king who banished human sacrifice and promoted learning and peace, but he was eventually defeated or exiled by forces loyal to Tezcatlipoca. A symbolic fall from grace that echoed throughout Mesoamerican literature. Was Tepiltzin a real king, or a mythic memory of a golden age? Scholars debate the truth, but his legend shaped centuries of history. Segment 5, A Culture of Artisans and Engineers. Beyond war and myth, the Toltecs were master artisans and engineers. They built with basalt and obsidian, fashioned ceremonial knives and ritual masks, and established a network of roads and trade routes that linked distant polities, from the Gulf Coast to the Yucatan. Tula's architecture demonstrated a deep knowledge of symmetry, astronomy, and symbolism. Temples and palaces were aligned with celestial patterns, and sacred plazas were organized around cardinal directions. Their influence can be traced through art and pottery found far from their homeland in Chichén Itzá, for instance, where Maya and Toltec styles intertwine. Was this cultural diffusion through diplomacy, conquest, or pilgrimage? Possibly all three. Tula's merchants likely traveled with prized obsidian, turquoise, and cacao, and perhaps with ideology. Their religion and symbols spread like wildfire. Segment 6, Quetzalcoatl's journey and legacy. The story of Tepiltzin Quetzalcoatl did not end with exile. According to legend, he traveled eastward toward the sea, vowing to return one day from the east, an idea that haunted the Aztecs centuries later when they saw Spanish ships arriving from the Gulf. This legend became a powerful tool of memory, not just for the Toltecs, but for every civilization that followed. To the Aztecs, the Toltecs were the model of civilization. They referred to elite artisans and sages as Tolteca, a title of cultural excellence. They claimed descent from Tula's rulers and modeled their temples on Toltec blueprints. In essence, the Toltecs became a symbol of greatness lost, of a golden age corrupted, and of the eternal hope for a sacred return. Segment 7, Echoes in Chichén Itzá, a fusion of worlds. Far to the southeast, deep in the Yucatan Peninsula, the influence of the Toltecs would etch itself into stone in one of the most iconic Maya cities, Chichén Itzá. Archaeological and architectural evidence suggests that around the 10th century CE, Chichén Itzá underwent a transformation. Its once distinctly Maya style began incorporating Toltec elements. The Temple of Kukulkan, the Temple of the Warriors, and a great ball court all bear unmistakable signs of Central Mexican design and ideology. Eagle and jaguar reliefs, columns of warriors, and Zompantli skull racks mirror those found at Tula. Even the depiction of Kukulkan, the Maya-feathered serpent god, echoes Quetzalcoatl in form and story. But was Chichén Itzá conquered by the Toltecs? Or did its leaders willingly adopt Toltec ideology to bolster their divine authority? Most scholars lean toward a process of cultural syncretism, a complex interweaving of religious, political, and economic exchange. Maya elites, facing internal unrest and regional fragmentation, may have invited Toltec ideas as a form of ideological unification. Thus, Chichén Itzá became a hybridous city where the cosmology of the highland Toltecs fused with the astronomical precision and ritual depth of the Maya. In this way, the Toltecs extended their reach not just through conquest, but through transformation. Segment 8, Human Sacrifice and the Cult of the Heart. Among the most controversial legacies of the Toltecs is their association with institutionalized human sacrifice. The art of Tula is saturated with symbols of ritualized violence, eagles devouring hearts, serpents consuming warriors, and skulls depicted with chilling frequency. These were not merely decorations but ideological declarations. For the Toltecs, sacrifice was cosmic necessity, the HistoryDocumentary. In Nahuatl was the seat of the soul and a gift to the gods who had given their own lives to create the world. On ceremonial days, captives, often warriors from rival city-states, were ritually slain atop temples, their blood an offering to maintain balance in the cosmos. The sun, they believed, would cease its journey without this sacred exchange. And yet, this was not indiscriminate slaughter. It was highly ritualized, precise, and imbued with meaning. Warriors died with honor, priests performed with purpose. To modern sensibilities, such practices are difficult to reconcile. But in the world of the Toltecs, sacrifice was order, and without order, the universe would fall into chaos. Segment 9, Decline and Disappearance. By the mid-12th century CE, Tula had begun to unravel. The reasons for its decline remain debated. Environmental strain, internal factionalism, prolonged drought, or invasion from the north each may have played a part. There is evidence of violent destruction. At the ceremonial center, temples burned, statues toppled, structures abandoned. Some suggest a civil war between factions aligned with Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca philosophies, a clash of ideals that tore the empire apart. Others believe that incursions from nomadic Chichimec tribes, those once like the Toltecs themselves, overwhelmed the state, regardless of cause. By 1150 CE, Tula was largely abandoned. Its buildings crumbled under the weight of centuries, and its once vibrant plazas fell silent. But the memory of Tula would not fade. Segment 10, the Toltec Afterlife. In memory and myth, to the Aztecs who rose in the centuries following the Toltec collapse, the people of Tula were the very embodiment of civilization. In Aztec literature, to be called a Toltec was to be a master craftsman, a keeper of knowledge, a speaker of beauty. Their royal genealogies were traced to Tula's rulers. Their religious calendar built on Toltec frameworks. Their temples modeled after Tula's stone geometry. Even Moctezuma II, the last great Aztec emperor before the Spanish conquest, revered the Toltecs as his sacred ancestors. When the Spanish chroniclers arrived in the early 1500s, they recorded Aztec accounts of the Toltecs not as history, but as legend, a golden age of wisdom and purity lost to time. To them, the Toltecs were more than human. They were demigods, philosophers, and bringers of sacred knowledge. They blurred the lines between fact and myth, becoming a mirror in which every future empire saw its idealized self. Segment 9, Decline and Disappearance. By the mid-12th century CE, Tula had begun to unravel. The reasons for its decline remain debated. Environmental strain, internal factionalism, prolonged drought, or invasion from the north each may have played a part. There is evidence of violent destruction. At the ceremonial center, temples burned, statues toppled, structures abandoned. Some suggest a civil war between factions aligned with Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca philosophies, a clash of ideals that tore the empire apart. Others believe that incursions from nomadic Chichimec tribes, those once like the Toltecs themselves, overwhelmed the state. Regardless of cause, by 1150 CE, Tula was largely abandoned. Its buildings crumbled under the weight of centuries, and its once vibrant plazas fell silent. But the memory of Tula would not fade. Segment 10, the Toltec Afterlife. In memory and myth, to the Aztecs who rose in the centuries following the Toltec collapse, the people of Tula were the very embodiment of civilization. In Aztec literature, to be called a Toltec was to be a master craftsman, a keeper of knowledge, a speaker of beauty. Their royal genealogies were traced to Tula's rulers. Their religious calendar built on Toltec frameworks. Their temples modeled after Tula's stone geometry. Even Moctezuma II, the last great Aztec emperor before the Spanish conquest, revered the Toltecs as his sacred ancestors. When the Spanish chroniclers arrived in the early 1500s, they recorded Aztec accounts of the Toltecs not as history, but as legend, a golden age of wisdom and purity lost to time. To them, the Toltecs were more than human. They were demigods, philosophers, and bringers of sacred knowledge. They blurred the lines between fact and myth, becoming a mirror in which every future empire saw its idealized self. Segment 12, Shadows That Still Speak. In today's Mexico, echoes of the Toltecs can still be felt. In the town of Tula de Allende, where the ancient city once thrived, the colossal warriors still gaze across the valley, unmoved by time. Tourists walk beneath them, unaware of the blood and belief once soaked into the earth beneath their feet. Artists, poets, and nationalists in modern times have invoked the Toltecs as symbols of indigenous genius, a reminder that before the Spaniards, before the Aztecs, there was a culture that married art and war, science and spirit. In Nahuatl, the name Teotihuacan means the essence of being Toltec, a concept that lives on as a code of refined behavior, wisdom, and creativity. Even in contemporary philosophy, the Toltec code, popularized by modern spiritual writers, draws inspiration, however loosely, from these ancient people. Though the Toltec Empire is gone, their shadows still dance across the desert, their stones still whisper, and their myths, like their warriors, still stand. The Toltecs were neither the first empire of Mesoamerican or the last, but in their short reign, they bridged eras, connecting the silence after Teotihuacan's fall with the brilliance of Aztec ambition. They turned myth into monument, belief into stone, and order into legend. And though their origins remain shrouded in dust and their fall obscured by fire, one truth is clear: the Toltecs were more than warriors, more than priests. They were architects of memory, and through that memory, they still walk with us, And so, their voices fade into silence once more, but the stones they raised, the stories they etched into earth, and memory still whisper beneath our feet. Thank you for joining us on this chapter of Whispers of the Ancients. Until next time, may the past continue to speak, and may we continue to listen.